They sold her to a madman. A homeless madman who talked to trees and slept in the rain. Her own father looked her in the eyes and told her she had no choice. Marry the village lunatic or watch them all die. Nkem thought her wedding night would be the last night of her life. She thought she'd married a monster who would hurt her in ways she couldn't imagine. But when that madman opened his mouth and spoke his first clear words, when he revealed who he really was, when the sun rose over their wedding compound and the entire village saw what had happened. Everything Nkem thought she knew about her life, about kindness, about God's protection, everything, shattered into a million pieces. This is the story of a girl with no escape and a man everyone called crazy. And what happened between them shocked the nation. Nkem Okofor was 22 years old, and she had learned the terrible truth: beauty without protection isn't a blessing. It's a curse. Her mother died when she was 15. Just gone. A fever that wouldn't break, and then Nkem was alone with her father and her stepbrother Dubom in a house that used to smell like her mother's cooking and now smelled like alcohol and fear. At first, her father tried. He really did. But grief does things to a man. Grief and cheap gin are a poison combination. Within 2 years, the man who used to carry Nkem on his shoulders couldn't even look her in the eye anymore. Dubom was worse. 3 years older than Nkem, with all of their father's weakness and none of his shame. He gambled. He borrowed money from dangerous men. He made promises he never kept. And Nkem woke up every morning before the sun rose. Fetched water. Worked a farm. Sold vegetables in the market. Every single kobo went to feed 2 grown men who did nothing but destroy themselves and everyone around them. By the time she turned 20, men started coming to their compound at night. Banging on the door. Shouting about money. About debts. About what happens to people who don't pay. But before we continue with Nkem's story, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the notification bell. Because the stories we share here, they'll change how you see the world. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Now, back to that Wednesday evening that changed everything. Nkem. Her father's voice cracked through the air. Come here. Now. She wiped her hands on her wrapper and walked inside. Her father sat in his old wooden chair, eyes red and swollen. Dubom stood beside him. And both of them were expressions that made Nkem's stomach drop to her feet. Sit down, her father said. He wouldn't look at her. Nkem sat on the small stool near the door. Her heart was pounding. Dubom spoke first. Nkem, you know we've had some difficulties. With money. Everyone in Umona knew about their difficulties. We found a solution, her father said quickly. Still not looking. A marriage. For you. The world stopped spinning. Marriage. Nkem whispered. To who, Papa? The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. To Afumafuna, Dubom finally said. Nkem shot up so fast the stool fell over. The madman. You want me to marry the madman who lives in that abandoned building near the market? He's not fully mad, her father started. He talks to trees, Papa. He wears rags. He sleeps in the rain like an animal. Nkem's voice was shaking now, rising with each word. Papa, please, you cannot mean this. Dubom's face went hard. We owe Chief Okonkwo 50,000 naira. He gave us until the end of this month. That's 6 days, Nkem. 6 days. If we don't pay, his boys will kill Papa. They will burn this compound. Do you understand? Then I'll work. I'll borrow. From who? Dubom shouted. Who will lend us money? We've borrowed from everyone. We have nothing left. Nkem's hands were shaking. Then why would the madman marry me? He has nothing. Her father finally looked at her. And what Nkem saw in his eyes made her blood run cold. Guilt. Chief Okonkwo suggested it, her father whispered. He said. Afumafina came to him 3 weeks ago. Spoke clearly for the first time in years. Said he wanted to marry you. Said he would pay Chief Okonkwo the 50,000 we owe, plus interest, if the chief arranged the marriage. The room started spinning. The madman has money. Apparently, Dubom said. Nobody knows where from. But Chief Okonkwo says it's real. He's already received half. He'll get the rest after the wedding. Nkem looked at her father. At the man who'd once called her his princess. The man who now couldn't even meet her eyes. So you're selling me, she said. Her voice was flat now. Dead. You're selling me to a madman to pay your debts. Nkem, her father reached for her. She stepped back. Don't touch me. You have no choice. Dubom screamed. If you refuse, we all die. Is that what you want? You want your father's blood on your hands. Nkem stared at the floor. At her bare feet on the cold concrete. At the life she'd known disappearing right in front of her. When, she asked quietly. Her father's voice broke. Saturday. 4 days from now. Everyone in Umona knew about Afumafuna the madman. He'd appeared 5 years ago. Just showed up one day like a ghost. At first, people thought he was passing through. But he stayed. Made his home in the old school building, the one with the collapsed roof that nobody wanted anymore. He wore rags that might have been expensive clothes once. You could still see hints of good fabric under all the filth and tears. His hair was wild, matted into thick knots. He talked to himself. Gestured at empty air. Laughed at things nobody else could see. But here's the thing about Afumafuna's madness, it had patterns. He never stole. Not once. Even when he had nothing to eat, he never took so much as a piece of fruit from the market stalls. He never hurt anyone. Children threw stones at him sometimes, cruel little games, and he'd just laugh and walk away. And sometimes, he'd say things that made no sense in the moment but turned out to be terrifyingly true later. 3 months before all this happened, he'd stood in the market square screaming, "The big tree will fall. The big tree will fall before the rains come." People laughed. Called him crazy. 2 weeks later, Chief Okonkwo's eldest son got arrested in Lagos for fraud. The big tree had fallen. Just like the madman said. Nkem had seen Afumafuna many times over the years. And she'd done something she never told anyone about. She left food for him. Wrapped in banana leaves, placed near his building when she passed by on her way to the farm. She never saw him take it. But the food was always gone. Once, about a year ago, she'd been walking home late from the market when 3 young men from the neighboring village blocked her path. Their intentions were clear. And terrible. Before they could touch her, Afumafuna appeared from the shadows. Screaming. Wild. Unpredictable. The men ran. Fear does that when you can't predict what someone will do next. But then Afumafuna looked at Nkem. Really looked at her. And for just a moment, one single, breathtaking moment, his eyes were completely clear. Completely sane. He nodded once. Then walked away, muttering to himself. Nkem never forgot that moment. Never forgot what she saw in those eyes. Intelligence. Purpose. Something. Now, lying on her thin mat the night after her father's announcement, she wondered what that something was. And she wondered if she would survive long enough to find out. News spread through Omona like wildfire in dry season. Have you heard? Okafor is marrying his daughter to the madman. That beautiful girl. To Afamafuna. It's a curse. I heard the madman paid their debt to Chief Okonkwo. Where would a madman get that kind of money? Something is not right. This is abomination. The women came to visit Nkem. They brought pity and curiosity in equal measure, like gifts nobody wanted. Poor child, they'd say, shaking their heads. What did you do to deserve this? But on Thursday morning, Mama Nkechi came. And unlike the others, she didn't bring pity. She brought questions. Nkem, the old woman said, settling her 83-year-old bones on the wooden bench in the compound. Tell me, has this Afamafuna ever harmed you? Nkem shook her head. No, Mama. Has he ever spoken to you? Not in words, Nkem said slowly. But once, he helped me. When some men wanted to hurt me. Mama Nkechi's eyes sharpened like broken glass. Did he? And in that moment, did you see his eyes? Nkem's breath caught in her throat. Yes. They were clear. The old woman nodded slowly. Nkem, I have lived 83 years. I have seen many things. I will tell you something, madness is sometimes a mask. And some masks are worn for protection. She stood up with difficulty. Do not be afraid of Saturday. Be watchful. Before Nkem could ask what she meant, Mama Nkechi shuffled away, leaving Nkem with more questions than comfort. Friday came too quickly. Dubon brought home a simple white wrapper and blouse. For tomorrow, he said, dropping it on her mat without looking at her. Her father had locked himself in his room with a bottle. She could hear him crying. That night, Nkem sat in the dark compound, looking at the stars. Mama, she whispered to the sky. If you can hear me, if you're watching, please protect me. I'm so afraid. The night air was still. Then, from somewhere in the darkness, she heard it. Soft, melodic humming. The tune was familiar. An old lullaby her mother used to sing when Nkem couldn't sleep. Nkem's heart stopped. That song. Her mother had taught it to her when she was small. Nkem had never sung it for anyone else. Nobody in Umona knew that song except. She stood up, her whole body shaking. Who's there? The humming stopped. Silence rushed back in like water filling a hole. But Nkem knew what she'd heard. Someone was watching. Someone who knew things they shouldn't know. Saturday morning broke with heavy clouds. The wedding was at Chief Okonkwo's compound. Not to honor the bride and groom, oh no. Chief Okonkwo just wanted to make sure he got his money. There was no ceremony. No white dress or church service. Just a small gathering of witnesses, a pastor who rushed through the vows like the words were burning his mouth, and a contract. Nkem wore the simple white wrapper and blouse. Her hair was braided neatly, but she wore no makeup, no jewelry. She looked like she was dressed for a funeral, not a wedding. Afamafuna arrived escorted by two of Chief Okonkwo's men, like they were afraid of what the madman might do. But when Nkem saw him, she gasped. He was washed. His hair, though still long, was clean and pulled back. The rags were gone, replaced by simple but clean clothes. A worn but whole kaftan and trousers that actually fit him. And his face. Beneath the wild beard, he wasn't old. Maybe 30. Maybe younger. And his features were striking. Strong jaw, high cheekbones, and those eyes. Those eyes that had looked sane for just a moment a year ago. Today, they looked sane again. Today, they looked directly at her with an expression she couldn't read. Do you, Nkem Okafor, take this man as your husband? The pastor asked mechanically. She couldn't speak. Her throat had closed up completely. Answer. Dubom hissed from behind her. I. She looked at Afumafuna. He tilted his head slightly. The corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile. Something else. Reassurance. Promise. I do, she whispered. Do you, Afumafuna? The pastor hesitated, realizing he didn't know her surname. Take this woman as your wife. Afumafuna's voice, when it came, shocked everyone into absolute silence. It was clear. Deep. Educated. Completely, utterly sane. I do. Gasps rippled through the small crowd like a wave. Dubom's eyes went wide as plates. Even Chief Okonkwo looked startled. The pastor stammered through the rest. I now pronounce you, you may. But nobody was listening. Everyone was staring at Afumafuna, who had not spoken clearly in 5 years, who had just used the voice of an educated man. Chief Okonkwo recovered first. The payment, he said sharply. Afumafuna reached into his kaftan and pulled out an envelope. He handed it to the chief without a word. Chief Okonkwo opened it, counted quickly, and nodded. The debt is paid. He looked at Nkem's father with pure disgust. Okafor, your daughter is no longer your concern. Whatever happens to her now is not your burden. It wasn't a blessing. It was a warning. Afumafuna turned to Nkem and extended his hand. Come, wife. Let us go home. His voice. That clear, sane, impossibly normal voice. Nkem took his hand because she had no choice. And because somewhere in her chest, a small flame of hope had sparked to life. Maybe Mama Nkechi was right. Maybe madness was sometimes a mask. Afumafuna led Nkem through the village as people stared from doorways and windows. He didn't take her to the abandoned building where he'd lived. Instead, he walked to the edge of Umona, toward the old mission house that had been empty for years. As they approached, Nkem saw light glowing through the windows. Her confusion grew with every step. Afumafuna pushed open the door, and Nkem stepped into another world. The inside had been completely transformed. Clean floors. Comfortable furniture. Candles burning on tables. Fresh flowers in clay pots. The air smelled like lavender and lemongrass. Welcome home, Afumafuna said quietly, releasing her hand. Nkem turned to face him, her heart hammering against her ribs. Who are you? He smiled then. A real smile that transformed his entire face. I am Afumafuna Adeyemi. Son of Professor Adeyemi, former Dean of the University of Lagos. I hold a master's degree in psychology and a doctorate in theology. And for the past 5 years, I have been pretending to be mad. The word tilted sideways. Why? The word came out as a whisper. Sit, he said gently, gesturing to a cushioned chair. Please. This will take some time to explain. She sat. Mostly because her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. Afumafuna sat across from her, and for the first time, she saw him as he really was. Intelligent. Handsome. Completely, utterly sane. 5 years ago, he began, my sister was 17 years old. Beautiful. Kind. Innocent. Her name was Kamsi. His voice caught on the name like a hook in flesh. She came to this village to attend a wedding. While she was here, she was assaulted. By 3 men. Sons of prominent families. When my father tried to get justice, the families bribed the police. My sister's name was destroyed. They called her a liar, said she had been willing. The shame. He stopped, pressing his fingers to his eyes. Kamsi took her own life 3 months later. She was 18 years old. Oh God, Nkem breathed. My father spent everything trying to get justice. He lost his position at the university. My mother fell sick from grief. Within a year, I had lost my entire family. I'm so sorry, Nkem said, tears streaming down her face. I came to this village seeking revenge, Afimafuna continued, his voice hardening like steel. I wanted to destroy the men who destroyed my sister. But they were protected. Powerful. Untouchable. So you pretended to be mad, Nkem said, understanding dawning like sunrise. Yes. As a madman, I was invisible. I could go anywhere, hear anything, see everything. People speak freely around those they think cannot understand. And I learned so much. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the dark village. I learned about Chief Okonkwo's smuggling business. About Pastor Nubizi's 3 secret families. About the village council's embezzlement of government funds. I documented everything. Wrote it all down. Sent anonymous letters to authorities in the capital. He turned back to her. But I also learned about you, Nkem. Her breath caught in her throat. I watched you leave food for a madman. I watched you tend your mother's grave every Sunday, even in the rain. I watched you give your last coins to Widow Nkechi when her grandchild was sick. I watched you protect a child from a beating in the market, even though the child's father shouted at you. You've been watching me. I've been watching everyone, he said softly. But yes, I noticed you. How could I not? In a village full of people who ignored a suffering madman, you were the only one who saw a human being. The only one who showed kindness without expecting anything in return. He knelt before her chair. When I heard your father and brother discussing selling you to settle their debts, when I heard Chief Okonkwo suggest auctioning you to the highest bidder, I knew I had to act. Nkem's hands flew to her mouth. Auctioning. Chief Okonkwo had buyers. Men from the city who pay for young village girls. Your father didn't know. Dubom suspected, but he didn't care as long as the debt was cleared. Rage and horror filled her chest like poison. My father was going to. He didn't know, Afimafuna said quickly. Chief Okonkwo would have told him after the money exchanged hands. By then, it would have been too late. So you. Nkem couldn't finish. I went to Chief Okonkwo. Spoke clearly for the first time in 5 years. Told him I wanted to marry you and that I would pay double what he would get from his buyers. He agreed because money is the only thing he understands. You saved me, Nkem whispered. I protected you, Afimafuna corrected. But Nkem, you must understand, this marriage was the only way I could remove you from that house legally, publicly. Otherwise, they would have come after you. Claimed you were stolen. Chief Okonkwo would have used his influence. I understand, Nkem said. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Afimafuna said, standing. His face was grave. The wedding was just the beginning. The real danger starts now. What do you mean? Nkem asked, fear creeping back into her voice like cold water. Afimafuna walked to a wooden chest in the corner. He opened it and pulled out a thick folder. This, he said, holding it up, contains 5 years of documentation. Evidence of every crime committed by the powerful men of this village. Chief Okonkwo. The council chairman. The police superintendent. Even the local judge. If that folder goes public, they'll be destroyed, Afimafuna finished. Arrested, tried, imprisoned. Everything they've built will crumble. Then why haven't you released it? Nkem asked. Because I was waiting, he said simply. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting for enough evidence to ensure they couldn't bribe their way out. And he looked at her. Waiting for you to be safe. Me? Nkem, you were the most vulnerable person in this village. If I had released this information while you were still in your father's house, still under Chief Okonkwo's reach, they would have used you as leverage. Hate you to get to me. But now that we are married. Now you're legally my wife. You're under my protection. And more importantly, he smiled grimly. Now everyone in the village saw Chief Okonkwo accept payment from a madman for a bride. They saw him participate in this arrangement. When the truth comes out, he can't claim innocence or ignorance. A knock on the door made them both freeze. Afumafina's expression shifted instantly. Go into the back room, he whispered. Now. But. Trust me. Please. Nkem ran to the back room and pressed her ear to the door. She heard Afumafina open the front door. Heard him begin muttering and giggling, the madman voice returning perfectly. Afumafina. Chief Okonkwo's voice, cold and sharp as a blade. Or should I say, Dr. Adeyemi. Nkem's blood ran cold. I don't know what you mean, Afumafina said, but his voice was still clear. The madman act was over. Did you think I wouldn't investigate? Chief Okonkwo's words dripped with menace. Did you think I wouldn't wonder where a madman got money? I made calls. Sent inquiries to Lagos. And I learned very interesting things about Professor Adeyemi's son. About his missing sister. About his sudden disappearance 5 years ago. Get out of my house. Your house. Chief Okonkwo laughed. Everything in this village is my house. Including that girl you just married. She's my wife now. Legally. You witnessed it yourself. Marriages can be annulled. Accidents can happen. Madmen can become violent and hurt their young wives, forcing concerned community leaders to intervene. Nkem's hand flew to her mouth to suppress a gasp. If you touch her, Afumafina's voice was deadly quiet. You what? You're alone. You have no family. No connections, nothing. I, on the other hand, have the police, the courts, and 20 men I can call with one phone call. Silence. Terrible, suffocating silence. Then Afumafina laughed. Actually laughed. Chief Okonkwo, did you really think I spent 5 years here without making insurance arrangements? What are you talking about? There are 3 copies of my documentation. One with a lawyer in Lagos. One with a journalist at The Guardian. One in a safe deposit box. If anything happens to me or my wife, they all get released automatically. Every crime. Every name. Every bribe. Do you understand? The silence that followed was different. Uncertain. You're bluffing. Am I? Are you willing to bet your freedom on it? Your properties. Your reputation. More silence. Leave my house, Chief, Afumafina said softly. And spread the word, Nkem is under protection. Anyone who touches her, threatens her, or even speaks badly of her will find their secrets becoming very public very quickly. Nkem heard footsteps. The door opened, then slammed shut. She ran out of the back room to find Afumafina leaning against the wall, his hands shaking. Are you okay? She asked. He looked at her and smiled wearily. I am now. But Nkem, you need to understand something. This village is about to become very dangerous for both of us. Then why stay? Why not just release the evidence and leave? Because running is what they expect. Running is what I did 5 years ago when I couldn't get justice for Kamsi. His jaw tightened. I'm done running. This ends here. A thought struck Nkem. The wedding night. Everyone in the village is expecting, they're expecting to hear. She couldn't finish the sentence, her cheeks burning. Understanding dawned on Afimafuna's face. They're expecting to hear signs of consummation. To confirm the marriage is real. Yes. He looked at her seriously. Nkem, I want you to understand something clearly. I married you to protect you, not to use you. You are safe here. This marriage is legal, but you owe me nothing. You sleep in the bedroom. He gestured to a door. I'll sleep here in the main room. Your body, your choice, your timeline. Always. Tears sprang to Nkem's eyes. In a world where she had been treated as property, as a commodity to be sold, here was a man offering her autonomy. But the village? Let me worry about the village, Afumefuna said. Your only job is to be safe and to start believing that you deserve safety. Nkem woke to sunlight streaming through clean windows and the smell of food cooking. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory rushed back, the wedding, the revelations, Chief Okonkwo's threats, Afimafuna's protection. She got up and found Afimafuna in the small kitchen, cooking yam and eggs. Good morning, he said with a gentle smile. Did you sleep well? Better than I have in years, she admitted. They ate breakfast in comfortable silence. Then Afimafuna said, we need to go to the village this morning. What? Why? Because if we hide, people will create their own stories. We need to be seen. Together. Unharmed. Happy, even. It will confuse them, and confusion is useful. He was right, Nkem realized. The village would be buzzing with speculation about what happened on their wedding night. They walked to the market together. Afimafuna held his head high, walking with confidence and clarity. No muttering. No madness. Just a man with his wife. The village's reaction was spectacular. People stopped and stared. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Market women let their goods fall from their hands in shock. Is that the madman? He's walking normal. He's talking to her. Real talking. What kind of medicine did that girl use? Mama Nkechi appeared from her compound, a knowing smile on her ancient face. Good morning, Afimafuna. Good morning, Nkem. Good morning, Mama, Afimafuna said warmly. Thank you for your wisdom to my wife. The old woman's eyes twinkled. Some of us are old enough to remember your father, boy. I knew who you were the moment you arrived in this village 5 years ago. You have his eyes. Nkem gasped. You knew. I know many things, Mama Nkechi said. And I know that today, Umona will begin to change. The reckoning is coming. As if summoned by her words, a police car pulled into the village square. But this one the local police who took Chief Okonkwo's bribes. These were officers from the state capital, and they were accompanied by 2 journalists with cameras. Chief Okonkwo emerged from his compound, his face confident. Officers, what brings you to our humble village? Chief Okonkwo, the lead officer said, pulling out a document. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of human trafficking, bribery, and corruption. The village square erupted in shocked murmurs. This is ridiculous. Chief Okonkwo sputtered. I don't know what lies you've been told. We have documentation, the officer said. 5 years' worth. Names, dates, amounts, photographs. Would you like to see? Chief Okonkwo's eyes found Afimafuna across the square. The rage and fear in that look could have set the world on fire. You, he breathed. You did this. No, Afimafuna said clearly, his voice carrying across the square. You did this. 5 years ago when you covered up the assault of my sister. When you took bribes from rapists. When you decided that money was worth more than justice. You did this to yourself. Gasps rippled through the crowd. People were recording on their phones. The journalist's cameras were rolling. "I have lived among you for 5 years," Afimafuna continued, his voice growing stronger. "I pretended to be mad because madness made me invisible. And in my invisibility, I saw everything. I saw how power corrupts. How good people stay silent. How evil flourishes when it goes unopposed." He took Nkem's hand. "But I also saw kindness. I saw a young woman who fed a homeless madman. I saw a community of good people who have been silenced by fear. And I decided that 5 years of pretending was enough. It's time for truth." More police cars arrived. More arrests were made. The village council chairman. The police superintendent. Others whose names Afimafuna had documented. By midday, the entire power structure of Umona had crumbled. The weeks that followed were chaotic. Journalists descended on Umona like locusts. Afimafuna's story, and Kamsi's story, made national news. "The mad genius who brought down a corruption network," read one headline. 5 years undercover, how one man's grief became a village's salvation, read another. But the real change happened quietly, in small ways. Nkem's father came to the mission house 3 days after the arrest. He stood at the door, unable to meet his daughter's eyes. "Nkem," he said, his voice broken. I didn't know about Chief Okonkwo's real plans. About what he wanted to do to you. If I had known, you would have sold me anyway," Nkem said quietly. "To pay your debts." Her father flinched as if struck. "Yes," he whispered. "God forgive me, you're right. I was weak. I am weak." "Yes," Nkem agreed. "You are." They stood in silence. Then Nkem said, "Afimafuna is starting a counseling center. For people struggling with addiction. With debt. With shame. Maybe you should come." Her father looked up, tears streaming down his face. "After everything I did to you, you would help me." "I'm not doing it for you," Nkem said honestly. "I'm doing it because I refuse to become bitter. Because someone showed me that protection and kindness still exist in this world. And because my mother would have wanted me to offer hope even to those who don't deserve it." Dubom never came to apologize. He left the village in shame and was never heard from again. The mission house became a hub of activity. Afimafuna used his education to start programs, counseling, adult literacy classes, financial planning workshops. Nkem, discovering she had a gift for teaching, began tutoring children whose parents couldn't afford school fees. And slowly, quietly, Umona began to heal. A girl reported abuse for the first time in years. This time, she was believed. Families started talking to each other again instead of hiding behind closed doors. Young people who had left were coming back, bringing hope and new ideas. Women started speaking up in village meetings. Their voices, silent for so long, were finally being heard. The mission house that had been empty and forgotten was now filled with laughter, learning, and life. One evening, 6 months after the wedding, Nkem stood in the garden watching children she taught playing in the compound. Her father was inside, attending his 3rd counseling session with Afimafuna. He was sober. For the first time in 7 years, he was sober. Mama Nkechi walked by, slower now but still sharp as ever. "You've changed this village, child," she said to Nkem. "I didn't do anything," Nkem protested. "It was Afimafuna." "It was both of you," Mama Nkechi corrected. "He brought justice. You brought mercy. This village needed both." 6 months after the wedding, on a quiet evening, Nkem and Afimafuna sat in their small garden watching the sunset. "Do you regret it?" Afimafuna asked. "Marrying a madman?" Nkem laughed, real laughter, the kind that had been missing from her life for years. "I married the sanest man I've ever met. The bravest. The kindest. I was terrified that wedding night, Afumafuna admitted. Terrified that you would hate me for trapping you in a marriage you didn't choose. You didn't trap me, Nkem said softly. You freed me. There's a difference. He took her hand. Nkem, this marriage began as protection. But somewhere along the way, for me at least, it became something more. I've fallen in love with you. With your strength. Your kindness. Your courage. Nkem's heart swelled. The wedding night shocked the village because they expected to hear suffering, she said. Instead, they heard silence. Peace. Safety. Yes. But Afumafuna, she turned to face him. Tonight is different. Tonight, the village doesn't need to hear anything. Tonight is just for us. She leaned in and kissed him, choosing this life, choosing hope over bitterness. And in that kiss, two broken people found wholeness. Later that night, Nkem went to the bedroom door where Afumafuna still slept out of respect. I don't want you to sleep out here anymore, she said. His face showed concern. Nkem, I told you, there's no pressure. She smiled. I'm not asking because of pressure. I'm asking because I choose you. Fully. As my husband. As my partner. As the man I love. He took her hand, kissed it gently. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. They entered the bedroom together, this time, by mutual choice. This time, there was no fear. Only love. The village of Umona held a celebration. It had been 1 year since the arrest. The trials had concluded. Justice had been served. And in the wake of corruption's collapse, new leadership had emerged, honest, accountable, focused on community good. At the center of the celebration, Nkem stood with her husband, her hand resting on her growing belly. Mama Nkechi approached, smiling her ancient, knowing smile. A baby, she said, touching Nkem's stomach gently. A new beginning for a new Umona. Yes, Mama, Nkem said. What will you name him? The old woman asked. Ha, Nkem corrected with a smile. We are naming her Kamsi. So that the girl who suffered will be remembered. So that her story will save others. Afumafuna wrapped his arm around his wife's shoulders. And so our daughter will know that from the darkest pain, the greatest purpose can emerge. Mama Nkechi nodded, tears in her eyes. The madman is the sanest man in the village. The souled girl becomes the teacher. The broken become healers. This is how God works. This is how God works, Nkem agreed. The celebration continued around them. Children played. Families laughed. The village that had been ruled by fear was now filled with hope. Nkem looked at her father across the compound. He was helping set up tables, sober and steady. He still had a long way to go, but he was trying. She looked at the mission house, now a beacon of light and learning. She looked at her husband, the man who had worn madness like armor to fight evil. And she looked down at her belly, where new life was growing. Somewhere in the sky above Umona, in the place where the faithful believe the ancestors watch, perhaps Kamsi smiled. Perhaps she saw that her brother's grief had not destroyed him, but transformed him. Perhaps she saw that her suffering had not been meaningless. Perhaps she saw, and was finally at peace.